This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
A good Moed, a good Yontif. The Torah tells us in Parshas Emor, which is the main place where the Torah discusses the mitzvah of Sukkos. And by the way, today's learning is Leili Nishmas, Reb Nachum Zev by Rabbi Yosef Doiv, Mr. Farbowitz's father. The Shamash Havin Aliyah be a Meilat Yosher for the entire Mishpacha, for all the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, Ad Biaskal Tzedek.
He was a comment of the Chafetz.
So his Zechus should be Megan for the entire Mishpacha. So the Torah tells us in Parshas Emor that the mitzvah of Sukkos, the Torah says, Aman Yedu Doreisechem, so that all future generations should know, Ki Basukkos, Hayshafti, Es Bnei Yisrael, that all future generations should know that I situated the Klal Yisrael in Sukkos, v'hoitziya oisam eretz Mitzrayim, when I took them out of Mitzrayim, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, and you may be familiar with a lot of the information that we're going to learn today, but as they say, Ein Beis HaMedrash B'lai Chidush, hopefully, as Hashem, we will add a few novel points. But we know there's Machlokes Tanoim. It's actually a Machlokes between the Bavli and the Sifra, who says what, between Rebbe Lezer and Rabbi Akiva. But nevertheless, Rashi tells us, Ki Basukkos Hayshafti, what does it mean that I situated the Bnei Yisrael in Sukkos? Anane Kavod. This refers to the clouds of glory. We know it's Machlokes Tanoim, whether it was Anane HaKavod or it was Sukkos Mamish. But nevertheless, Rashi seems to be taking sides in this Machlokes, which is not really Rashi's regular practice. Rashi is not one to take sides in Machlokes Tanoim, but nevertheless Rashi chimes in and Rashi tells us the simple meaning of the Psukim. Rashi says in the beginning of Bereshis, Va'ani lepshutai shel mikra basi, I have come merely to teach you the simple interpretation of the Psukim. And one may say, well, the simple interpretation of the Psukim is that we sat in booths, not in some type of miraculous protection, but nevertheless Rashi feels that the simple interpretation of the Psukim, Ki Basukkos Hayshafti, is Anane HaKavod, miraculous clouds. And this is the opinion of the Targum as well. Bedil de Yidun Darechot, so that all future generations should know. Arevim Taloyos Anoni Oisevis Yas B'nei Yisrael Be'apakusi Yasain Me'ar de Mitzrayim. That all future generations should know that in clouds of glory, B'mataluyos Anoni, clouds of glory, I situated the Bnei Yisrael. Why does Rashi feel that this is Pshutai Shel Mikra? Well, the super commentaries on Rashi, I believe the Mizrahi points out that the language of Hayshafti implies that this is something God did for us. If it was merely Sukkos Mamish, it would say Ki Basukkos, right? Yashu b'nei Yisrael b'hoitziya oisam eretz Mitzrayim. Hayshafti implies this is something that on God's part He is giving to us, and therefore the simple interpretation of the pasuk is Anane HaKavod. And in fact, as uncharacteristic as it is for Rashi to take sides in Machlokes Tanoim, the Shulchan Aruch, which is certainly not a sefer of Drush, the Shulchan Aruch itself takes sides in this Machlokes, the Mechaber, in Sim Tafresh Nun Hey, Tafresh Chav Hey, the Mechaber says, Basukos Teishvu Shivas Yamim, Ki Basukos Hayshafti Es B'nei Yisrael. What does this refer to? Haim Anane Kavod. This refers to Anane Kavod Shehi Kifam Bahem, that God surrounded us with, Laval Yikam Shara V'Shemesh, so that we would not be smitten by the heat and the sun. Okay. The obvious problem is that if the reason we sit in Sukkos is to commemorate that Hashem situated us in Sukkos when He took us out of Mitzrayim, the obvious problem is, well, we left Mitzrayim in the month of Nisan, in the spring. So it would be most logical to sit in Sukkos, not in Tishrei, but rather in Nisan. And this is the well-known question of the Torah in Siman Tafresh Chav Hey. The Torah asks, even though we left Mitzrayim in the month of Nisan, God did not command us to sit in Sukkos in Nisan. Why?
Which you would normally do in that
You're
time of
right.
year.
That's what you normally do, and it therefore would not be recognizable why you're sitting in the sukkah. A lot of people go out in the springtime to enjoy the spring weather. Lefishu yemais hakayitz. Sukkah's time is the end of the summer. V'dach kadam lasei sukkah letzel. And it's the Nisan time is the beginning of the summer, and many people, they go out into the sukkah, they go out into their huts, they go out into their backyards, and they lay in their hammocks. It would not be recognizable why we're doing the mitzvah. Therefore God commanded us that we should sit in the sukkahs in the 7th month, which is the rainy season. And it is normal for a person to leave the sukkah then, right? What do people do Sukkah's time and Tishrei time? That's the time you start gathering in all the backyard equipment. You bring in the grill, right? You bring in the hammock. You bring in the porches. You bring in, the places that you hang out in the springtime. And it's time to, spend time in the indoors. Now it's indoor season. The Sukkah's time is indoor season. So when people see Klal Yisrael, they're leaving their homes and they're going into the great outdoors, they're not thinking they're going outside to enjoy the weather. Look, that's when the rainy season begins. So this way it's recognizable that we're doing it for the mitzvah. We leave the house. Yira l'chol. This way, it's recognizable to everyone. Shemitzvas hamelach hi aleinu la'asoisai, that the command of God is upon us.
Didn't we once have Shiur on the Samachta B'chakecha that the Anani had Kavod returned? They went away.
So we'll see. Let's see.
Well, maybe that's what.
Let's see. So that's the question of the Torah. The Torah wants to know. Why did Hashem command us to sit in Sukkos to commemorate the Exodus of Egypt? Well, to commemorate the Exodus from Egypt, we should sit in the Sukkos Pesach time, right? We should be eating the matzah in the Sukkah, eat the maror in the Sukkah, eat the charoises, have a seder in the Sukkah. After all, it's commemorating precisely the exact same event. Okay. But we could add that the Torah has not completely answered the question. Why not? Because the Torah is merely giving us a reason why this season was chosen. But He has not provided us with a reason why this precise date was chosen. In other words, if the reason we sit in the sukkah in the rainy season is because this is a time of the year that it's recognizable, well, think about it. We don't start davening for rain until Sukkot is over, so technically the rainy season has not begun. If you want to really make it recognizable, you should sit in the sukkah January, when it's snowing outside. I mean, we've explained why we haven't used that half of the year. Okay, we've narrowed it down now to 6 months. But why precisely this time, the 15th day of Tishrei? Okay. Another major, very fundamental question is that we know in the Midbar there were 3 major miracles in the Midbar. You had the man in the Sukkos of Moshe Rabbeinu. You had the Anani HaKavod in the Sukkos of Aaron HaKohen. And you had the Be'er in the Sukkos of Miriam. Right? How do we know we had the Be'er in the Sukkos of Miriam? Because as soon as Miriam died, they had no water to drink. How do we know they had the man in the Sukkos of Moshe? That's what we learned in the Gemara in Tainus. That the man, Moshe, himtir lahem es haman. The Anani HaKavod was in the Sukkos of Aaron HaKohen because Vayar ki gava Aaron, right? They saw we were revealed. So I have a question for you. You have 3 things. You have food, you have water, and you have the clouds of glory. Of these 3 miracles, which one would you say is the most important?
The clouds, the
I would say either the food or the water. Yeah? If you're in a desert, you either need to eat or you need to drink. Do you need heavenly clouds?
Yeah, the Bnei Yisrael didn't complain about the clouds.
That's a luxury. That's a luxury.
It's not a luxury.
Why?
You couldn't live with the sun if you were completely exposed.
So you build a tent.
If there were no Anani HaKavod, you couldn't live.
You build a tent.
Yeah.
You build a tent.
They didn't, Jews only complained. They complained about Mayim and they complained about food. They didn't complain about the Anani HaKavod.
Of all the things to make a Yom Tif over, you're going to make a Yom Tif to celebrate clouds? I mean, when was the last time you woke up in the morning thinking, you know what?
Look at the clouds.
Oh, I hope it's a cloudy day today.
You're a lifeguard.
Right? Even,
You're a lifeguard.
right? Even now we go swimming indoors. But nowadays, when was the last time you woke up in the morning in the summer, you know? I really hope it's a cloudy day. Not just regular clouds. Thick, dark clouds. When was the last time you were happy about clouds? Food! You have a good lunch, you know? Well, maybe you remember to say thank you to your wife. You have a good drink, okay. But clouds? And of all the Nisim that we celebrate, what do we celebrate? There is no Yom Tov commemorating the Man. There is no Yom Tov commemorating the air. Well, a Yom Tov, what? Commemorating clouds. I mean, come on. You got the wrong miracle. And this question is raised by the Beis Alekim in the Shar HaYesodos, in Parak Lamed Zayin, the base of the Mabit. It's also brought down by the Chida, in Parshas Emor. And one answer that is given, that we're not going to get into today, is precisely the fact that it was a luxury is why we celebrate it. Because what's the big deal? God gave us food. He threw us in the midbar. He has to give us food. We're going to die without food. God gave us water. Shkoyach. He threw us in a desert. He has to give us water. But the fact that Hashem is not only concerned with our necessities, but He's concerned for making life pleasurable for us, that demonstrates a certain element of the relationship we have with the Rebbe Hashem, that He loves us so much. He's interested in providing even for things that we don't need. But we would like to explore today some added insight into this question.
Why wouldn't they need it?
Clouds?
If it would have needed, the Rabbi Shalom wouldn't have given it.
We didn't need it.
Could have survived.
We could have had regular clouds. We needed clouds of glory.
The sun was so hot.
Mr. Sherman, God could have put regular clouds. But these were not regular. These were Anani HaKavod.
They came on HaKavod because they saved the Jewish people in Midbar.
Now, Ananika means that this was God's presence.
Yeah, God's presence.
God could have protected. He could have made an umbrella.
Without God's presence, there's no Jewish
He
people.
could have given us sunscreen. He could have given us suntan lotion. Some people like to get a suntan. People in the hottest days of the year, right? They sit in direct sunlight. They take it in. Yeah. Okay. Now, Rabbi said we're going to take a look at an amazing diuk that really the Meshech Chachma draws our attention to, and that is the what Sukkos is called in Parshas Mishpatim, in Parshas Kisisa, and in Parshas Emor. Parshas Mishpatim, what is Sukkos called? Chag HaAsif, the Yom Tif of gathering. What do we gather?
Food.
The grain. We gather the grain. Is it called Chag HaSukkos? No. Is it called Moyadim L'Simcha? No. It's called Chag HaAsif. Parshas Kisisa. What is the Yom Tif of Sukkos called? Chag HaAsif. All of a sudden, we get to Sefer Vayikra, Parshas Emor, Chag HaSukkos Ta'asa L'cha Shivas Yamim. Chag HaSukkos? When did it become Chag HaSukkos? What happened? Why in Parshas Mishpatim and in Parshas Kisisa it's not called Chag HaSukkos, and all of a sudden we get to Sefer Vayikra, it's called Chag HaSukkos. Okay. Let's take a look at another medrash in number 8. This is Medrash Shemais Rabbah, Parsha Beis Ois Hei. On the pasuk, Vayina Ages Hatzayin Achar HaMidbar, Amar Rabbi Yeshua, Lama HaYaroidef LaMidbar. Why did Moshe run to the Midbar? Lefi Shara Sheyisrael Nisalu Min HaMidbar. Moshe realized that Klal Yisrael would be greatly elevated in the Midbar. Shnamar, Mi Zois Oila Min HaMidbar. Who is this who rises from the Midbar? Shahaya Lahem Min HaMidbar Haman. They had in the Midbar the man, V'haslav, V'habe'er, V'hamishkan, V'hashchina, Kihuna, Malchus, Be'ananei HaKavod. So, is this medrash good for you? You like this medrash? There's a major problem on this medrash. What's the major problem on this medrash? It's out of order. It's out of order. Because, wait a second, When did the Bnei Yisrael start getting the man?
The first day of it.
When they're out of Mitzrayim. When they're out of Mitzrayim. Really? Right when they left Mitzrayim?
Not right
No. The matzah that they took out of Mitzrayim lasted for how long?
40 days.
30 days, right? Until Pesach Sheni. So if that's the case, the man they didn't have right away. But the Ananei HaKavod, when did they get the Ananei HaKavod? Immediately. The unknown protected them from the Mitzrayim firing the nuclear missiles. Right? So if that's the case, the matanos that Klal Yisrael got in the Midbar that are described in this medrash are out of order. First it should say Ananei HaKavod, and then it should say all the others. Okay. Next question is one of my favorite questions. And that is, raise your hand. Who here bought the lulav and esrog before Yom Kippur? I can testify to that, right? Who bought the lulav and esrog before Yom Kippur?
Technically, I did.
Technically you did.
Because I paid for it before.
You paid for it before. I hope you didn't use a check.
Because?
Check is not a kinyan.
Really?
Yeah, it's a promissory note.
That's what?
What happens if they cash it?
If they cash it, that's a discussion in halacha. If you want, it's a discussion in halacha. Most contemporary poskim hold checks are not cash, and therefore, since you need to own your esrog midairaisa, and midairaisa, if you give kesef.
But if the person gives it to you and you pick it up and you do Mashiach, and the person who's selling to you is mine, they give it to
so
you.
So kesef is a kinyan. Hagbah is not a kinyan midairaisa.
No, but it's good.
On metaltalin. Only kesef. Now the chachamim were masakin that hagbah is a kinyan, but that ain't going to help you for a dairaisa. So therefore, it is recommended that you actually pay for your lulav and esrog before the Yom Tov of Sukkos, and don't buy it on credit, and don't buy it with a check.
Why? The check today is considered by kesef.
Not in halacha.
Yeah, Kesef doesn't bounce, checks do.
Okay, but in any event, but that's a side point. Yeah? That's a side point. So if you want to pay with a check, it's always recommended to have a nickel on you. Give the nickel also, unless you know for sure they're going to cash it before the Yom. Okay, but that has nothing to do with anything. Says Amatei Ephraim, in places that they have a lot of esrog merchants, let's say Main Street, right? There is no shortage of moichrei esrogim. Noyagin anshe ma'isa liyos reason makdimin liknois lahem esrogim yafim mehudam. These reason, the people who are haste and zealous to do mitzvahs, they buy beautiful esrogim when b'chein lahachin lahem lulam adasam b'tzarach mitzvahs hachag b'chol ish. Any person, based on his assets, should honor God with what he has. In other words, buy it before Yom Kippur. Why? And the zchus, well, there's no mitzvah to buy a lulav and esrog, right? There's no mitzvah in the Torah to buy a lulav and esrog. But the thought, what?
You're not allowed to steal it, you have to buy it.
Yeah, but there's no mitzvah to buy it. The mitzvah is to take it on Sukkos, right?
Yeah, but Keita is a purchase.
Okay. Yeah, but there's buying a lulav and esrog is not one of the 613 mitzvahs. It's a hefsher mitzvah. But the thought of doing the mitzvah will retroactively join up with the act of the mitzvah to tip the scales before Yom Kippur. In other words, says the Amatei Ephraim, when should you buy your lulav and esrog? Before Yom Kippur. This way, buying the lulav and esrog, what? Will tilt the scales. Unless you know you'll be able to get better merchandise after Yom Kippur. Very interesting. So the Amatei Ephraim, I could have gone two ways. I could have said, you know what? Better to buy the lulav and esrog before, tilt the scales, or maybe buy it immediately after Yom Kippur to go from one mitzvah to the next mitzvah. Like the Amatei Ephraim says with the mitzvah of Sukkah. What does he say in number 10? Hamedaktikin masilin miyad b'matzah yom kippur ba'asiyas hasukkah k'dei latzis mi-mitzvah mitzvah. When it comes to sukkah, he says, when should you build a sukkah? Immediately after Yom Kippur. Immediately after Yom Kippur. Well, why don't we say build the sukkah before Yom Kippur to tilt the scales? After all, there's a bigger inyan to build the sukkah than there is to buy a lulav and esrog. Because actually, building a sukkah, you can make the case that building a sukkah is also a mitzvah.
Yeah, but if you build a sukkah before, you're building yourself a hut for the sun or whatever. To sit in.
Why? You're building it for sukkahs.
No, doing the same sukkah.
Yeah,
It's not a sukkah yishana.
If you build the same sukkah, you could do it
The whole year. And then certainly within 30 days, even Beis Shammai says, right, you could build it within 30 days. So why is it when it comes to lulav and esrog, you should buy it before Yom Kippur? Because you want to tilt the scales. And when it comes to sukkah, you should build it after Yom Kippur to go from one mitzvah to the next. I could have said the exact opposite. Build the sukkah before to tilt the scales. Buy the lulav and esrog right immediately after Yom Kippur to go from one mitzvah to the next.
sukkah you can use all year round. So if you build the sukkah too early, you can say, yeah, you're building it for personal use. You know, nothing to do with.
But again, we have in the Mishnah.
It can only be used on sukkahs.
Okay. But sukkah, the Mishnah already gives us a klal that the time frame for the mitzvah of sukkah is within 30 days.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we come to something that it seems that you're all familiar with, and that is the commentary of the Vilna Gaon on Shiur HaShirim. And the Vilna Gaon, I always like to review this in my mind every year, really gives us a completely different understanding of the entire Yom Tif of Sukkos. But I saw recently that this comment of the Vilna Gaon is actually the Targum on Shiur HaShirim. On the pasuk that says, Ad sheyafuach hayoim v'nasu hatzilalim, look at the Targum in Shiur HaShirim, the Targum says what we're about to say. Says the Vilna Gaon, let me tell you something. Everybody knows that when Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim, we had Ananei HaKavod. But we don't make any Yom Tif on having the miraculous Ananei HaKavod. After all, we don't make a Yom Tif for the Man. We don't make a Yom Tif for the Be'er. The Jewish people do not make Yomim Tovim out of miracles. We don't just make a Yom Tif. Oh, a miracle happened. Make a Yom Tif. Many miracles have happened. Look at what?
C.S. Glatstein was not a miracle.
It was thousands of miracles. Just the fact that a miracle happened, we don't make a Yom Tif.
Make a Yom Tif. That is inside.
It's to commemorate the miracle.
Besides Hanukkah?
Hanukkah? Do we make a miracle? Is it to celebrate the miracle?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit? Or is it to celebrate the fact that we were not annihilated, or we were not wiped out, or that the mitzvahs were preserved? Just the fact that a miracle happens, look in the Gemara. Look how many miracles are mentioned in the Gemara. When somebody lit candles with vinegar and it burned, do we make a Yom Tif because of that? When hundreds of instances of Tchias HaMesim occur in the Gemara, we make a Yom Tif?
When the sun comes out, we don't.
When a miracle happens by itself, that may not be sufficient reason to make a Yom Tif. Let's see. Let's explore this. Rather, what happened? Says the Vilna Gaon, Uvazeh Yitura Tzma Shehikshu. With this we can answer what we asked. Lama anachnu oisim sukkos b'tishrei. Why do we sit in sukkos in Tishrei? Kivan shu neged hekef ananei kavod. If it's to remind us of the great miracle ananei kavod, hayaroi lasos b'Nisan. We should have made sukkos in Nisan. Ki b'Nisan hayat chilas hekef hananim. In Nisan is when the anonim surrounded us at first. Avol nireh, says the Vilna Gaon, and this is not the Vilna Gaon's own chidush. Again, this is brought down in the Targum on Shiur HaShirim. Lefi shekisha asu es ha'egel nistalku ha'anonim. Okay, remember this. When we made the egel, the ananei HaKavod left. So think about it. When did Klal Yisrael make the egel? Yud Zayin Tammuz. So Moshe, what happened on Vav Sivan? Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai to receive the Torah. He comes down when Yud Zayin Tammuz. He sees the Jewish people making the egel. He breaks the luchais. What happens to Ananei HaKavod? Adios. They disappear. what happens to the future of the Jewish people? It's in jeopardy. What does Hashem say to Moshe? Holy Moses, I am going to wipe out this people, and I'm going to make you into your own nation. So Moshe Rabbeinu down, no, save them. So Hashem says, fine. But I don't want to be with them. I'll send my angel to guide them. I'm not going to guide them myself. My presence is not going to lead them. So Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Har Sinai another 40 days. From when? From Yud Ches Tammuz until right before Elul. He goes up a third time. God says, let's take 2. Come up. And when Moshe Rabbeinu comes down on the 10th day of Tishrei, he hears the 2 magic words, Salachti kidvarecha, you are forgiven. I will not destroy the Jewish people. But guess what, God said? They're forgiven. But you go your way, and I'll go my way. And we have nothing to do with each other anymore. Yeah, you have to do the mitzvahs, and I'll reward you and I'll punish you, but that relationship is not there. Remember Reb Zelig? When we used to go to Shimon's Pizza every Tuesday afternoon together. So fine, I forgive you, but I'm not taking you out to Shimon's Pizza anymore. That's it.
I don't like Shimon's pizza.
Shh. La Bella, wherever you like. Yeah, wherever you like. But we can't do that anymore. Just because I'm not holding a grudge against you and I forgive you, but I don't love you anymore. That's so Yom Kippur. Klal Yisrael heard the wonderful news. Salachti kidvarecha. However, in a sense, it was devastating. You know why it was devastating? Because God said, Hine anochi sholech malach. I'm not going to guide you anymore. I'll send you my angel. Says the Vilna Gaon, they're very important. The Oz loy chazru, the Anane HaKavod did not return ad sheheschilu lasos HaMishkan, until they began to build the Mishkan. Now, when was that? Moshe Yard b'Yom Kippur. Moshe came down on Yom Kippur. Now Yom Kippur, they hear the magic word Salachti Kivarecha. The next word, Moshe gave them the command to build the Mishkan. What day was that? The 11th. Uvemachras Yom Kippurim vayakel Moshe v'tziva al meleches HaMishkan v'zeh haya b'Yir Aleph Tishrei. And the Jewish people brought Nedavos for how many days? Ba'boiker. The 12th. The 13th. What happened on the 14th? They stopped bringing. Vayikale ha'am mehavi. Uv'yadad b'tishrei natul kol chacham lev mimoshe hazav b'minyan of a mishkan. On the 14th, all the wise-hearted people brought Moshe the gold by count, by weight. And then, on the 15th, when they built the Mishkan, guess what came back on the Mishkan? Anani HaKavod. Uvetesvav eschilu lasos. Va'oz chazru Anani HaKavod. Ulakach anu oisin Sukkos betesvav betishrei.
How to work on 15th of Tishrei?
Ah, that's a good question. So let's just get first what the Vilna Gaon is saying. Says the Vilna Gaon, the Sukkos is not a celebration of Anani HaKavod. It's not. We don't celebrate miracles. We don't celebrate the man. We don't celebrate the be'er. That's what we're adding from the Gaon. We don't celebrate miracles. It's not a celebration of Anani HaKavod. It's a celebration of the return of the Anani HaKavod. And the return of Anani HaKavod happened precisely on this date. On the 11th, they were commanded to build the Mishkan. The 12th and the 13th, they brought Nedavos. The 14th, they stopped. The 15th, they started building. That is when the Anani HaKavod returned.
Was the Shechina in the Anani HaKavod, or it only came when the Mishkan was...
The Shechina was the Anani HaKavod. Now, Rabbi say, let's think for a moment, because that year, Rosh Hashanah was what day of the year? L'chayra Shabbos. That means the first day of Sukkot was Shabbos. If that's the case, how are they allowed to build the Mishkan on Shabbos?
More than that, they're not allowed to build the Mishkan even on the first day Yom Tov.
Or wasn't?
The first 8 days, Torah tells you is Yom Tov.
Well, that we don't. Okay, so let's see. Let's see for a moment. But the Yom Tov came after the fact, right? Let's see. In the Avodas HaGershuni, number 12, he quotes over this Vilna Gaon also. Okay, Hatam Hashemitzah Sukkah Hi B'Tesva L'Chodesh Hashvi Sheshar Shatam Shemitzah Sukkah Hu Hama Shechazar Hakadosh Baruch Hu V'Nesratze Lishkan B'Seich B'nei Yisrael. And the fact that God relented and He acquiesced to dwell among the Jewish people. V'loi limsar oisam l'malach, not to deliver us into the guidance of an angel, Chumash kasav b'tchila, like God had set out originally. Hinei anochi shalech malach lefanecha. And Klal Yisrael said, no, im ein panecha holchim al ta'aleinu mizeh. If God, you don't lead us, we're not leaving. We want you. Instead, God allowed the Shechina to dwell among us. Why? He has a little bit of a different account. On the 10th, Moshe came down. He told Bnei Yisrael to build the Mishkan. And that God would dwell among us forever. And God would never leave us. And on the day after Yom Kippur, He commanded them to bring donations. Like it said, that is why God commanded us to keep Sukkos on the 15th. Al Shem shezachinu leishiv tachas kanfei hashchina v'zehu peirosh hakasav ki ba'sukkos hoshafti es bnei Yisrael v'zehu anan hakavish shechazu hashchina l'Yisrael v'zehu mash amador ha'mechal v'shalom v'hinayam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu. We want God's pleasantness to be upon us. Umase yadeinu ze mase hamishkan kainana aleinu perish liyos lachein l'makom hashchina.
So they comment on why HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the Yom Tov 7 days. Here, Matan Torah, we celebrate one day. Why? Because the Anani Kavod came back, is it a 7-day Yom Tov?
Good question. I don't know if we're going to answer it.
Talmud tells you it's a 7 day, it's 8 day.
Yeah. Okay, now let's look in the last paragraph over here, just to address this last question. Because if it comes out that the first day of Sukkos was Shabbos, this doesn't fit into our cheshbon, because you're now to build the Beis HaMikdash on Shabbos. Hinei mashma le'el bebir Shir Hashirim. It is mashma earlier in his explanation on Shir Hashirim, Shabi Yodal b'tishrei natlu kol chacham lev mimoshe asazav. Amnam, Harab Rab Gershon, Bal HaVodas Gershuni Kosev Shesham Rabbeinu Shabi Yom Yodad hechwizu shelo yaviu oid. Basically, what are we saying now? We're learning that Rosh Hashanah was Shabbos, Sukkos was then Shabbos. That means Yom Kippur was what day of the week?
Monday.
If Tesvav was Shabbos, Yud Dalet was Friday, Yud Gimel was Thursday, Yud Beis was Wednesday, Yud Aleph was Tuesday, Yom Kippur was Monday. Right? However, if you look in the Baal HaTurim says that on Shabbos the Torah was given. If that's the case, Yom Kippur of that year was on a
Shabbos.
Tuesday.
Shabbos? If it's Shabbos.
And on Wednesday, that means on Wednesday, Hashem told Moshe told Klal Yisrael to build a Mishkan. And they brought Nedavos.
You can't change the calendar date. The 50th day would have been Friday. Even though we gave it on the Shabbos, that's the 51st day.
Okay,
So
but if
the
Shabbos...
calendar would have, you would have to then work around with Mole and Choster to get a Tuesday out of Yom Kippur.
If Yom Kippur was Tuesday, right, then it comes out, when did they get the command to build a Mishkan? Wednesday. They brought the Nedavos Thursday, Friday. Shabbos, they said no more. And Sunday, they started building the Mishkan. Okay, so this is a big discussion, exactly how you reconcile what the Vilna Gaon is saying with the calendar dates of that year. But in any event, Rabbi Isai, this is what the Vilna Gaon tells us. The Vilna Gaon is telling us that Sukkot is not a celebration of the miracle of Ananei HaKavod. It's a celebration of the return of the Ananei HaKavod. And in fact, many, many people point out that this Vilna Gaon is precisely what the Vilna Gaon explains, what we say in the Yom Tov davening. We say, Ata v'chartanu mikol ha'amim, ahavta isanu v'ratzisa banu. Says the Vilna Gaon, Ata b'chartanu mikol ha'amim. When did God select us from all the nations? He took one nation out of another. When did God select us? By which Yom Tov? Pesach. Ahavta isanu. When did God show His love to us? Ava, Rabba, Ahavtanu, Hashem, Elokeinu, Chemla, Gedola, Shavuos. V'ratzisa banu. What is ratzon? What does it mean, v'ratzisa banu? It's not kapara. God did not forgive us on Sukkos. If, let's say, somebody insults me and I forgive them, that's not ritzoy. That's kapara. I forgive you. But you insulted me publicly. Fine, I forgive you. But I'm not going to dance with you at my simcha the way I used to. The relationship is not there anymore. The definition of ritzoy is where I forgive you so much that our relationship reverts back to the way it was. It's chadesh yameinu kekedem. That's beyond kapara. Ritzoy is where the relationship is restored. So when was it v'ratzisa banu that God not only forgave us for the egel, but what? He was meratz at us. That's v'ratzisa banu. So the Vilna Gaon says, Ata b'chartanu mikol ha'amim is Pesach, Ahavta isanu is Shavuos, v'ratzisa banu is Sukkos. Look in the Siddur Hagra. V'hinei bo ha'gimel l'shonos neged ha'sholish v'galim kesidra. Ki ata b'chartanu hu be'ez Yitzias Mitzrayim. Ahavta isanu is Maimed Har Sinai. Like we've had many shiurim on what? The fact that Shavuos is like the chasana of Klal Yisrael, that God married us. V'ratzisa banu hu kaparas avono egel v'ashras hashchina. And that's where Chag HaSukkos comes. So Rabbi said it's an amazing thing. We're going to add something to the Vilna Gaon, and something that we never spoke out before. Think about the next stanzas. Ata v'chartanu mikol ha'amim, ahavta isanu v'ratzisa banu. Okay? V'roimam tanu mikol ha'lashonos. God exalted us over all languages. When was that? We could say back to Pesach, because one of the reasons we left Mitzrayim is shalosh shinu es l'shainam. V'kidashtanu b'mitzvaysecha. God sanctified us with His mitzvahs. When was that? Shavuos. V'keraftanu malkeinu avadan. He brought us close again. That's back to Sukkos.
2 cycles.
Yeah. Then we could add one more thing. What's the concluding stanza? B'shimcha hagadol v'hakadosh aleinu karasa. He allowed His name to be called on us. The Gemara says when you build the sukkah, Shem Hashem Chal Olav. The name of God takes effect upon the sukkah. So the last stanza could be going on the Yom Tov of Sukkos also. The Shimcha Hagado v'Hakadosh Aleinu Karasa may refer to the sukkah. Rabbi Sai, let's break over here.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.